Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, IAFEI, International Association of Financial Executive Institute, and CFO Vietnam for inviting me to speak on this webinar on SPAC. So for my presentation, I would like to share from Vietnamese perspective, which focus on my practice as a corporate lawyer and M&A lawyer for related issue for SPAC transaction for Vietnamese company. So start with my presentation. Let me share my slide. So my fellow speaker, Mr. Cortez and Mr. David Cho already mentioned to you I think quite a lot of detail for SPAC transaction and financial issue, etc. So for my presentation, I would like to focus on three parts. The first one is the overview of the certain SPAC transaction in Vietnam. And the second are the key consideration or issue for SPAC transaction for Vietnamese company. And the last one, I would mention about certain challenge Vietnamese company would face for SPAC and IPO. So for SPAC now in Vietnam, so as you know that this is hot topic all over the world and in Asia, and this also talk a lot in Vietnam now, but actually not so many Vietnamese firms have conducted this transaction. So here I listed a few part transaction as I know from public sources, and some proposed SPAC transactions that now Vietnamese company plan to do. For the part transaction here, we have two projects conducted earlier, I think long ago, between 2006 and 2009. The first one is Cavico Mining, and the second one is Chai Thien Street Transport. But for this transaction, actually, they are not exactly like a SPAC as it is today, but actually, all of these two transactions are reverse merger or backdoor listing. And both Cavico Mining and Chai Thien Transportation, they proceeded with the reverse takeover, and then they get the US entity listed in Pink Sheet and over-the-counter bulletin board back in 2008 and 2009. For the case of Cavico Mining, so they was then listed in NASDAQ in 2009, but in 2011, the entity was delisted from NASDAQ due to violation of disclosure requirement. And now with the SPAC trend in the world, so a few companies in Vietnam consider for SPAC transaction. The first one is VinFast LLC. It is the automotive unit of Vin Group. It's a big private property group in Vietnam. So now they expand to automobile, to technology area. And they target to we are listed in New York Stock Exchange with the targeted capital raise around 2 billion. And as public media reported, the expected valuation of the listing is between 50 billion to 60 billion US dollar. The second company considered for SPAC is a VNG, or Vina Game Software as a stock company. This is the first unicorn in Vietnam. So they are one of the top tech company in Vietnam in online game, music streaming, messaging application, payment solution, and related services. So they also target to get listed in NASDAQ, and the expected value after listing is between 2 billion to 3 billion. And the third case, actually this case is not exactly SPAC, but I think it's good for reference as alternative channel for listing abroad. That is Tiki stock company. Tiki is one of the top 5 e-commerce company in Vietnam. And actually they have a setup in May this year, a Singapore company called Tiki Global. And in July this year, Tiki Global have completed acquisition more than 90% of the share in Tiki in Vietnam. So they plan to do IPO in Singapore with Singapore entity Tiki Global. And now we come to the key consideration or issue for SPAC transaction for Vietnamese company. So for this section, I will follow basically 2 transactions related to the business combination as the result of the SPAC transaction. The first transaction is for SPAC to acquire a Vietnamese target company. And the second would be for Vietnamese promoter, shareholder of a Vietnamese target company to acquire and hold share in SPAC. So for the first transaction, so for SPAC to acquire a target Vietnamese company for business combination, so this presents a certain regulatory and legal issue that SPAC as a foreign investor should be aware of. The first one is foreign investment restriction under the law of Vietnam. So as you know that we have the new investment law, 2020 investment law. And for this new law, so it provides for the negative list approach for foreign investor investing and doing business in Vietnam. So this new law provides much more clarity for foreign investor in terms of market asset condition for market entry in Vietnam. So with this negative list approach, basically for business sector, if this sector of the target not included in the list of restricted sector for foreign investor, so all of foreign investors are entitled to the same market asset condition applicable to domestic investor. So the new investment law provides for very clear and specific list of restricted sector. So this list includes 2 sublists. One is a list of prohibited sector for foreign investor and the list of conditional sector. So of course, for prohibited sector like press, overseas contracted employment, agency, tourism service, except for inbound international travel. So SPAC as a foreign investor is not allowed to acquire a Vietnamese target company. And for the list of conditional sector, SPAC as a foreign investor must meet certain market asset conditions in order to acquire a Vietnamese target company. If they work or they operate in the list of conditional sector. So certain conditional sector include like insurance, banking, security, telecom, real estate, logistics, service. So market asset condition applicable to foreign investor like a SPAC would be in the form of foreign ownership limit, investment form like conditional joint venture form, investment scope, investment capacity, and also some other technical barrier depending on specific sector. So for foreign ownership limit, so foreign ownership limit would be imposed for those Vietnamese companies operating in the sector that fall in the lead of conditional sector, as I mentioned earlier. And in the case that any international treaty that Vietnam is a member or Vietnamese local law provide for a specific foreign ownership limit. So for these two cases, foreign ownership limit would be imposed. So for any foreign investor for acquiring Vietnamese local companies, so we need to check both international treaty and local Vietnamese law to determine what is foreign investment restriction, especially foreign ownership limit. And the new law now provides for very clear principle that if the business sector of the target company fall in the lead of conditional sector, but there is not any specific foreign ownership limit provided by an international treaty or local Vietnamese law. So for a private company or non-public company, there is not any foreign ownership limit applied. And for public and listed companies, so the foreign ownership limit would be kept at 50% of the charter capital of the target. And here I list certain specific foreign ownership limit for certain sector from Vietnam commitment to WTO. And the key principle for applying foreign ownership rule. So because this, I would not go into much detail about this. And the next is what are the key procedure and license approval for SPAC to acquire a Vietnamese company? There is the key corporate license and approval. The first one is M&A approval. If SPAC acquires share in a Vietnamese target company, so it have to obtain M&A approval. If the acquisition leads to increase in the foreign ownership in the target company in the list of conditional sector. The second case is that if the acquisition lead to increase in foreign ownership in the target from less than 51% to more than 51% of the charter capital. And the third case is the acquisition lead to the increase in foreign ownership in the target company where foreign ownership already exceeds 51% of its charter capital. The next regulatory requirements that a foreign investor like a SPAC have to proceed is to open a special investment account for the acquisition in Vietnam at a commercial bank here in Vietnam. So there is two types of capital account here. One is direct investment account, direct investment capital account, DICA. If more than 51% of the starter capital of the target is acquired. The second type of the account is indirect investment capital account. If less than 51% of the starter capital of the target is acquired. The next key license the SPAC have to obtain is amendment of the enterprise registration certificate, ERC. That means amended ERC is required to obtain to record the increased charter capital, to record the chain name of the target company or its legal representative, or change the member or owner of the target company if the target is a private limited company as a result of the acquisition. So for this case, if acquisition result in these changes, so an amended ERC would be required to be obtained. And another procedure, the target would have to do is to submit a notice of a foreign shareholder to the business register to record SPAC as a foreign shareholder. Apart from the above, the key corporate license and approval, there are also certain other regulatory procedure approval as required by specialized law in Vietnam. The first one is that the security law would apply for the acquisition of the share or stake in a public company. So of course, for this, if the target is a public company, so the party of the transaction have to follow the security rule, like open indirect investment capital account at a depository bank in Vietnam, obtain a security trading code from VSD, open a security custodian account at a custodian bank. And another very important and new regulatory requirement from the competition law in Vietnam is merger filing. So now, from with this new requirements, a lot of M&A deal or transaction in Vietnam are subject to this merger filing requirement. So the law now provides for merger filing threshold. The first one is total asset in Vietnam, 3,000 million Vietnamese đồng, or equal to 130 million US dollar. The second is the total sale turnover or purchase cost in Vietnam, also 3,000 million Vietnamese đồng. The third is the transaction value of the acquisition. If it reached 1,000 million Vietnamese đồng, or equal to around 43 million US dollar. The last one is that the combined market share as a result of the proposed merger or acquisition is 20%. So for this case, the party have to proceed with merger filing or notification on economic concentration. So regulator here is National Competition Commission, attached to Vietnam Competition and Consumer Authority, or we call VCCA. VCCA will conduct two-phase merger review process, preliminary and official appraisal. And the result from VCCA review would be in three forms: unconditional clearance, conditional clearance, or prohibited merger. And for the second transaction, when Vietnamese promoter or seller of the Vietnamese target company to acquire and hold share in SPAC. There are certain issues we need to be aware. Now, the Vietnamese law provide or categorize all outward investment activity into two categories. One is direct outward investment, and the second is indirect outward investment or portfolio investment. But in practice, the purchase or acquisition of share in a SPAC, a non-Vietnamese company, is treated in practice as a direct outward investment. So for direct outward investment, it would be classified as a purchase of share or stock in an offshore company to participate in management of that target, or simply establishment of an offshore company. So for any DOI activity, so the investor, that means here, Vietnamese promoter or seller of Vietnamese company have to obtain outward investment registration certificate from MPI, Ministry of Planning and Investment in Hanoi. And for this license, so normally the MPI will seek approval or support from a certain related authority like the State Bank of Vietnam, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Security, or specialized ministry. And even for certain large-scale project or sensitive project, prior approval from Prime Minister or National Assembly would be required before MPI to issue outward investment license. So for outward direct outward investment license, so the investor also have to follow strict foreign exchange control regulation, particularly the an offshore investment capital account must open in Vietnam and all outward and inward remittances must be done via this special capital account. And for this transaction, when Vietnamese promoter or shareholder of the Vietnamese target to acquire share in SPAC, so normally the party will proceed with capital stock or share swap between Vietnamese target and SPAC. But this remain an issue in Vietnam now, because for both transactions, the acquisition by SPAC or the acquisition by Vietnamese promoter or shareholder of Vietnamese target company to acquire share in SPAC, so foreign exchange control rule require for actual or real capital flow. But the local law do not recognize for share swap or non-cash transaction. So that means the party have to consider for the value or consideration of transaction to reconcile or something like that. And the last part of my presentation, I'm from challenge that Vietnamese company would pay for SPAC or IPO. I think the first one is, I think for local Vietnamese company, I think the most challenge for them is reporting and disclosure requirement or burden for them, because most of them may be not well prepared or ready for this. And the level of reporting and disclosure requirement in developed market as required by regulator is much more higher than in Vietnam. In certain area like financial reporting, disclosure, corporate governance, auditing, and accounting work. And also, like Mr. Cortez and Mr. Davicho already shared with you, that the market regulator in other jurisdictions like US or Singapore have imposed much stricter rule on SPAC transaction and related reporting and disclosure requirement. So there is also, I think, the biggest challenge that the Vietnamese company would face. And for other challenge, this mostly from Vietnamese legal framework. I already mentioned earlier, like foreign ownership limit and market asset condition for foreign investor. The complicated and lengthy regulatory approval process for license and approval the party need to obtain for related transaction for business combination. Foreign exchange control regulation, very strict, as I mentioned earlier. So that is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for your listening. And for the next Q&A section, I would be happy to take any question to share from my experience as a corporate and M&A lawyer. So thank you very much. Thank you.